welcome everybody here tonight. Before we open this meeting, I'd like to ask our chaplain, Remco Bromett, he's from our chaplain for the Milton Police and Fire, and ask him to come up and do an invocation for us.
Mr. Mayor, Mr. Honorary Mayor, members of the City Council, honored guests, I invite you to join me in this invocation. Let's pray. Almighty God, we begin tonight by honoring you and recognizing you as the creator of the universe and the world in which we live, and the sustainer of our world by the word of your power. And because of that, we recognize that you have appointed us as stewards over that world, which is a tall task indeed. And so we confess our dependence on you tonight. We need your wisdom to make complex and just decisions. We need your discernment in order to recognize what is best for the community. We need your grace to put the interests of others before our own. And we need your blessing, and that in all our conduct, public and private, we may walk with integrity and do everything above reproach. And so we join together in prayer tonight to pray for the City Council, the leadership of this city, and bless them with your presence and all of these things. We pray for the safety and well-being of our community and its citizens, its neighborhoods, and the protection and power and strength that is needed for our police departments and our fire department in their exercise of civil service, and wisdom and courage and boldness, grace and strength for all of our leadership, so that in every aspect of life that we enjoy in this city with all of its great quality, we can give you the glory and the honor that you deserve. Amen.
Thank you. Again, good evening. I want to welcome all of our Milton High School athletes that are here tonight, the staff members, the coaches, the parents. We're proud to have you here tonight. We're proud of you guys. I've also got another special guest. This is Brian Cochran. He's a 6th grader from Kings Ridge, and he was the winner of an essay, If I Were a Mayor, I Would, essay contest. And the GMA, Georgia Municipal Association, puts on a contest every year, and from our district, Brian was the winner. So we're real proud of him. I had lunch. The GMA had a special presentation and awards banquet earlier this year, and we had lunch down at the 755 Club, so that was a lot of fun. But so anyways, one of the things we asked Brian to do was to come up here and help us get this meeting started. So I'm going to let him call this meeting to order.
I would like to call the regular meeting of the Milton City Council for Monday, June 7th, 2010 in order. Will the city clerk please call the roll and make general announcements?
Good evening, Mayor Cochran and Council. I will be happy to call roll for the June 7th, 2010 regular meeting. However, I would like to remind those in attendance to please silence all cell phones at this time. Additionally, those attending the meeting who would like to provide public comment either during the public hearings or during the call for public comment, you are required to complete a public comment card prior to speaking to an item. There is no public comment for consent agenda items or items under first presentation. Those called to speak will be taken in the order that the speaker cards were received by the city clerk staff prior to the beginning of tonight's meeting. All speakers will identify themselves by name, address, and organization if applicable. When you hear the bell, you have 30 seconds to complete your remarks. The City Council may allow public comment on either an agenda item or general public comment from a representative of such an organized group or association, provided, however, that such an individual shall file a notarized affidavit that they have the authority to speak on behalf of said organization on a form provided by the city clerk prior to the agenda item being called. Demonstration of any sort within the chamber is prohibited, so please refrain from any applause, cheering, booing, outbursts, or dialogue with any person speaking. Please show the same respect to the person speaking that you will expect to receive yourself. Anyone in violation will be asked to leave. As I call roll, please confirm your attendance. Mayor Joe Lockwood.
Here.
Mayor Brian Cochran.
Here.
Councilmember Karen Thurman.
Here.
Councilmember Julie Zonner Bailey.
Here.
Councilmember Bill Lusk.
Here.
Councilmember Bert Hewitt.
Here.
Councilmember Joe Longoria.
Here.
Councilmember Alan Tart.
Here.
Would everyone please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance?
Tell you a little secret. I'm going to give Brian what everybody else gets here that's kind of hidden back there that you guys don't see. He's going to get some dots. Make it interesting. Again, we're welcome to have everybody here. The city clerk would please send the next item.
Next item is approval of meeting agenda. Staff would like to make the following changes. Defer under public hearings, alcohol beverage license application, the approval of alcohol beverage license for Manor Golf Development, LLC at 15952 Manor Club Drive, Milton. The applicant is Riverfront Management, Inc., wine, malt, beverages, and distilled spirits. We would like to defer that to the June 21st, 2010 agenda. This is agenda item number 101149. Our next item we would recommend is adding under reports and presentations a proclamation in thanks to volunteers who made Memorial Day 2010 a success. And the third item, we would like to move from unfinished business to reports and presentations, approval of an ordinance to create Article 13 of the City of Milton zoning ordinance to establish a Historic Preservation Commission.
Okay, and I'd also like to ask our city attorney to speak on that.
Mr. Mayor, members of the council, here's the concern, and I've discussed it with staff. Both of the items that are unfinished business, number 1 and 2, needed to have public hearings this evening, so the header is incorrect. Our respectful recommendation would be to move item number 1, where the city clerk just recommended under reports and presentations, would allow that to be a public hearing. Also to allow number 2 to be the second public hearing item. Have public hearings on both, Mr. Mayor, but do not approve this evening. Let's defer the actual decision and have another public hearing as quickly as we can get the legal ad run, preferably to the next city council meeting. My concern is that since it's identified as unfinished business, I wouldn't want individuals who have read the agenda online to not have come tonight simply because they didn't understand they would have an opportunity to talk. I will tell you that the legal ad was correct this evening and that it did provide both of those with the public hearings. It's just an agenda issue, and that would be my recommendation. So we would have a public hearing tonight on both of those topics under unfinished business, but then staff would advertise another public hearing for the what meeting? June 21st meeting, and at that point we could adopt after that public hearing. That's my recommendation.
You're applying that to both?
Yes, ma'am.
So basically what that will allow, those that came tonight prepared to speak will be able to speak, but then those that we're not aware will have another opportunity.
Thank you, Mr. McGuire. That's correct.
Is there any other items on the, to be considered? Okay, do I have a motion and a second?
Mayor, I'd like to make a motion to approve the meeting agenda as recommended by staff.
I'll second.
Okay, I have a motion by Councilmember Tart, second by Councilmember Thurman. Is there any discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That's unanimous. Okay, next item is public comment. Public comment is a time for citizens to share information with the mayor and the city council and to provide input and opinions on any matter that is not scheduled for its own public hearing during today's meeting. There's no discussion on items on the consent agenda or first presentation from the public or from council. Each citizen who chooses to participate in public comment must complete a comment card and submit it to the city clerk. Please remember this is not a time to engage the mayor or members of the city council in conversation. When your name's called, please come forward and speak into the microphone stating your name and address for the record. You'll have 5 minutes for remarks. City Clerk, do we have any public comment cards tonight?
Yes, Mayor, we have one, and that's Miss Patty Silva.
Hello, Mayor Bryan and Mayor Lockwood and the council and everybody else. Okay, I didn't come prepared, and I heard last minute about this meeting, and I didn't want to bother. Huh?
Give your name and address.
I'm sorry. Oh, sorry. Patty Silva. I should know that.
Even though
I should
everyone
know.
knows who you
I
are.
know. Patty Silva, 1685 High Grove Club Drive, Milton, Georgia. Okay. So anyway, so I'm here tonight to tell you a few things. One is, as I was driving here, I'm going to try not to take too much time, but I just want to give you my enthusiasm for the city, as if you don't know. But I was driving here behind a fire truck and City of Milton, and I was just, I got this kind of like rise, like, I don't know, you just get excited about that. I thought, well, maybe it's because I'm a 50-year-old woman almost driving behind a fire truck. And I thought, no, it's really not that. You have to take the joke, I hope. But it's more like the City of Milton and the excitement about our police and our fire and the whole city coming together. Okay, and the community. So that's where I stand on that. But I wanted to lead into why I'm here, which is because of the Crabapple Community Center. And quite honestly, I missed half of what you said back there. The air conditioning was on, but to our attorney. But I'm here because I understand there's a possibility that you all might tear it down. And I'm heartbroken over that fact, or the rumor, or whatever it is, that you're thinking about doing this. And I want to tell you why. As you know, I'm very involved in the oral history of this community, and I know lots of the people here, the elderly, the natives of this area. And whether or not you think that building's old or not, maybe it's only 30 years old, I don't really know. And it's cinder block, and you might think it's the ugliest duckling ever in the face, in Milton. But what happened in those walls is really, really important to me. And I have an idea, because I'm coming with a solution. I don't want to be a nag or, come up with a problem here. I'm trying to come up with a solution on what we can do instead of just building a pocket park, which I think would be adorable, okay? It would be really great to hang out there. But let's think of something else before we tear it down. What about if we got the community together, Bill Lusk, the engineer, Joe Lockwood, you do things, whatever, in architecture. What about Brian and whatever the architects down in Crabapple that have built half the houses in Milton recently? Maybe they would donate their architectural drawings. And some other people in the city, like the Bell family, Bell Memorial Park, who are electricians. Maybe you don't know that, or there's all these people here. But anyway, plumbers and all these other people in the city that you may not be aware of. And what if they all came together and built our community center to a place where we would all want to hang out? And what I'm talking about here is for you to visualize the possibilities. Before you tear it down, just visualize the possibilities of what could happen within those walls. Maybe we could build a little 2-story cute little thing on the side, that's more industrial and not expensive, and use the red little barn for storage. Or the house for storage for the City of Milton. I don't know what it is. But I'm just saying to be creative and not think immediately to tear it down. So let's come ask the community at large. And just know that in my little research, I do know that the first school of Crabapple was on that land. And that's huge, don't you think? Wouldn't it be so sad and send a message to all of these people that I care so much about, that I know that a lot of you care about, the original Milton people, to send a message that we're tearing something down, whether insignificant to you, means something to them. And I think it would be an amazing message to build our community at this time and all come together, walking towards that place and embracing it and blessing it and all that. That's all I have to say. Thank you. And by the way, I'm on the way to a dinner party right now to plead my case with the Fulton County manager, because that's how passionate I am. I want him to tell me everything there is to know about that building. He's going to get me the history, and I'm going to plead my case to you, okay? And I'm hoping that you all will listen, and that I've never seen a room so filled here. But whoever you all are in the audience, that you would consider, embracing this project. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you.
consent agenda. Will the city clerk sound the items?
Yes, Mayor Cochran. We have 5 consent agenda items. First, approval of the May 3rd, 2010 regular meeting minutes, agenda item number 101143. Next, approval of the May 10th, 2010 work session minutes, agenda item number 101144. Our third item is approval of the May 14th, 2010 special called minutes, agenda item number 101145. Fourth, we have approval of the GDOT Certification Acceptance Qualification Agreement, agenda item number 101146. And final, we have approval of an indemnification and maintenance agreement with the Hopewell Plantation HOA for the installation of radar signs within the subdivision. This is agenda item number 101147.
Is there a motion and second?
Mr. Mayor, I move that we approve the consent agenda as read.
One second.
We have a motion by Councilmember Luss, second by Councilmember Hewitt. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? It's unanimous. Okay.
Moving to reports and presentations, will the city clerk please sound the next item?
Yes, Mayor, I'd be happy to. That would be recognition for Memorial Day essay contest finalists, presented by Councilmember Bill Lusk.
Thank you. 3 years ago, we started our Memorial Day celebration. A year ago, our city arborist, Mark Law, came up and suggested that we hold an essay contest in conjunction with Memorial Day. When Cindy Bonacci, our director of parks, came on board, she picked up the ball and ran with it. She developed the criteria by which the essay contest would be run and judged, and we jointly came up with the theme, Remember to Remember. And she sent this information to our middle schools, not knowing what to expect. Thanks to the encouragement of Hopewell Principal Thompson, teachers Ms. Isaac, Ms. Wording, and Mr. Tyler, we received 100 applications or entries for the essay contest. And these were received from the 6th and 8th graders at Hopewell Middle School. These essays were then read, and the group narrowed down to 16, then 11, then finally to the final 5. It's a committee of 5, which included members of the staff and military veterans in the town. It was a very rich and rewarding experience to read and hear the thoughts of these 6th and 8th graders. One of the judges was retired Marine Major Jim Lake, and he, along with I, confirmed that the judging process was a very tough thing to do. And Major Lake, to quote him, he said it was like trying to decide which of your children you love the most. Is the Principal Thompson or the teachers, Ms. Wording, Ms. Isaac, and Mr. Tyler in attendance? Guess not. As I call your name, please step up to the podium. These are the essay winners. Shelby Conway, honorable mention. Amy Lee, honorable mention. Anna O'Donnell, 3rd place. Bryce Williams, 2nd place. And Bryce is not able to be with us, so his dad's here to be recognized.
Old 8th grader.
Must be a post-grad. And our winner this year, 1st place, is Amy Sheehan. And Amy's out of the country with her family this month, but she will attend the council meeting on July 7th to be recognized and to read the winning essay. If If you'll stand by. This is the first Navy Jack issued in 1775. Also have something else for each one of you. Milton stuff. Thank you. Very proud of you, and Milton's very proud of you. And would you like the rest of the council to come down? In addition to this, each of the entries is to receive a certificate of recognition. And for honorable mention, a certificate awarded to Shelby Conway. Amy Lee. Anna O'Donnell. And Anna was at our celebration on Monday also. And for Bryce Williams. So, thank you.
One, two, three. And let me get one more. One, two, three. Thank you.
Congratulations.
Might add, I wish everyone could read these essays. Several of them brought tears to our eyes. It's encouraging to know there's such a level of patriotism amongst 6th, 7th, and 8th graders out there. It's really encouraging for me and for the committee that judged these essays. Thank you very much for doing all.
Will the city clerk please sound the next item?
Yes, Mayor Cochran, we have added by motion and vote a proclamation in thanks to volunteers who made Memorial Day 2010 a success. This will be presented by Mayor Joe Lockwood.
And as you guys see, there's a lot of proclamations tonight, a nice proclamation night. But I wanted to kind of slide this proclamation in after our successful Memorial Day service and presentation we had this past Monday. I just wanted to go ahead and offer up this proclamation. So, in thanks to the volunteers who made Memorial Day 2010 a success, believe we've started a tradition here, and I wanted to thank everybody that was part of that. So whereas the City of Milton held its third Memorial Day celebration May 31st, an undertaking that took months of planning and dozens of volunteers and staff members to pull together successfully, and whereas staff from every department in City Hall pitched in to ensure all aspects of the ceremony, that the ceremony went smoothly, and whereas scores of citizens and residents from Milton and surrounding cities volunteered their time and made certain the event was well attended, and whereas military veterans and current active military personnel took part in the service to memorialize the sacrifices of many, and whereas local businesses donated food, beverages, and place settings for a special guest breakfast before the event, and whereas, as he has done for the previous 2 years, Councilmember Bill Lusk again helmed the effort, including providing a base of veteran volunteers and, at his own expense, creating and placing the beloved markers on Deerfield Parkway. And whereas this multi-tiered effort ensures that the Memorial Day in the City of Milton will become a cherished and storied tradition with roots in the early years of the city. Now therefore, we, the Mayor and City Council of the City of Milton, hereby thank our peers, staff, veterans, and volunteers for the most successful Memorial Day ceremony yet held. And that's given under my hand and seal on the City of Milton, Georgia on the 7th day of June. If the council doesn't mind stepping forward, I want to present this to Councilmember Luck. Get a picture. Thank you, Bill.
Will the city clerk please sound the next item?
Yes, sir. Our next item is proclamation in recognition of Milton High School Girls Lacrosse State Champions. This will be... Councilmember Karen Thurman will present.
All the girls to come forward. And I believe what we're going to do is wait and do pictures right outside afterwards because there's so many of us. But I did want them all forward to read this. It says, whereas lacrosse is a sport that requires skillful hand-eye coordination, mental awareness, and physical endurance, and whereas the girls lacrosse program began in 1999 as a club sport at Milton High School and has rapidly grown since that time, and whereas in 2002 the Georgia High School Association officially sanctioned lacrosse as a high school sport, and in 2005 recognized lacrosse as a full-fledged high school sport, and whereas the Milton High School girls lacrosse team has a tradition of excellence and accomplishment in academic and athletic competition, reflecting the highest ideals of hard work, training, and sportsmanship. And whereas the girls lacrosse team has made it to the Georgia High School Association State Championship every year since their inception. And whereas the Milton High School girls lacrosse team won the Georgia High School 5A State Championship in 2005, 2006, 2007, 2008, and 2010. And whereas the Milton High School girls lacrosse team racked up an unprecedented amount of play superlatives, including 40 All-State honors, 11 U.S. Lacrosse All-Americans since 2004, 4 U.S. Lacrosse Honorable Mention All-Americans since 2005, and 30 U.S. Lacrosse Academic All-Americans. And whereas The players on the Milton High School girls lacrosse team are champions not only on the field but also in the classroom, in the community, and in life. We are proud that this great team is located in Milton, Georgia. Now therefore, we, the Mayor and City Council of the City of Milton, hereby dictate and proclaim Monday, June 7th is Milton High School Lacrosse Day in the City of Milton, Georgia, given under his hand and seal of the City of Milton, Georgia on the 7th day of June 2010. Mayor Joe Lockwood. There you go. And I think what we're going to do, if y'all don't mind sitting down, we're going to go outside afterwards and get a group picture of all the girls and the boys. It's just hard in this small room to get a picture and get everybody in it unless we're on top of each other. So, thank y'all. Good to see you.
Will the city clerk please sound the next item? Will the city clerk please sound the next item?
Yes, Mayor Cochran. The next item is proclamation in recognition of Milton High School boys lacrosse state champions. This will be presented by Mayor Joe Lockwood.
Now I'm going to ask the boys if they'll come step forward to the podium. You guys can get a little closer. Not you, Zach. This might be the only time you guys have this. This is the courtroom, too. All right, I'm going to read this proclamation for the Milton High School Boys Lacrosse Team Day. Whereas lacrosse is a sport that requires skillful hand-eye coordination, mental awareness, and physical endurance. And whereas the boys lacrosse program began in 1999 as a club sport at Milton High School and has grown rapidly since that time. And whereas in 2002 the Georgia High School Association officially sanctioned lacrosse as a high school sport, and in 2005 recognized lacrosse as a full-fledged high school sport. And whereas the Milton High School boys lacrosse team has a tradition of excellence and accomplishment in academic and athletic competition, reflecting the highest ideals of hard work, training, and sportsmanship. And whereas the boys lacrosse team has made it to the Georgia High School Association semifinals in their 2008, 2009, 2010 seasons. And whereas the Milton High School boys lacrosse team won the Georgia High School 5A state championship in 2010. And whereas the players on the Milton High School boys lacrosse team are champions not only on the field, but also in the classroom, in the community, and in life. We are proud that this great team is located in Milton, Georgia. Now, therefore, we, the Mayor and City Council of the City of Milton, hereby dictate and proclaim Monday, June 7th as Milton High School Lacrosse Day in the City of Milton, Georgia, given under our hand and seal in the City of Milton, Georgia on the 7th day of June. Yeah. If, let me make sure this is legal. Can we leave the room, Mr. City Attorney?
Mayor, you may leave the room.
Thank you, sir. Then we can have everybody, parents and athletes and coaches. We'll go outside. Jason probably have the best spots to take a picture of everybody.
We're going to walk around the side of the building. I'm going to stand up on the other end, try and get everybody in.
Hey, right.
There's also cookies in. Yep.
Hold on one second. Before we go outside. Where's our other mayor with the gavel? Before we go outside, I want to also, Councilmember Thurman's got some signs here you guys might like to see as you drive into the city of Milton. Good? All right. Let's go outside.
Let the coaches hold
How are
the
the
signs.
cookies?
Is the mayor going to be in our picture? What about the other mayor?
You want to get a hose? Here. There you go.
Yes, sir. Come on outside.
I was telling Tracy, we got the race down to 8 points left. 8 points left. Not quite the sports team. Right there.
He's almost as good looking as his old man. Because I thought we typically public or second reading. Well, some point.
And you didn't find anywhere. the state requirement, we get that thing done.
We could build ourselves in the next meeting.
Well, we may just want to tackle that one issue, I'm sure.
I've seen it on their line, we come back and say, hey, we need to do this, this, and I'm gonna argue with them, I'm gonna say, hey, you're getting like 20 inches. Put your hip in there and decide to get it.
But you don't think, just for general ordinance stops in Milton, you don't see where a public hearing, a true bona fide, everybody come up and chat about it, hearing is required.
Yeah, see, that's, zoning has its own separate. Yeah, zoning exists.
Yeah, but okay, I mean, let's talk about an animal control ordinance.
Yeah,
Animal control
any
ordinance. Huh? Well, this is, well, it's sort of a budget thing. Well, there's no harm by having a public hearing.
We may not need them.
I hope not. I sent it to them, I haven't really got a comment back from them.
Just because that's the way it's been done, doesn't mean it's right.
Right, well, I agree with that.
We need to change the steps.
I don't know that we do, I mean.
Right, yeah, city code. Yeah, I think in fact we may have.
Somebody talk to Chris, though, while I'm on the second. Even if you know, even if that's required,
And they're taking on the Bethany family.
Once and for all, that was Bethany Band, or Bethany Band Road.
No, that's not the one that's.
Oh, that's not the one? Oh, okay.
But I think we
Where
can.
was that? I've never seen it.
Number 3. Have you been there yet? Cabernet?
Yeah, Cabernet.
Can we keep this thing rolling?
Everybody else, we're ready.
We got a quorum.
Okay, let's keep going.
on, man.
Ryan, where are you? Dude,
That gavel
there he
fella.
is. Okay.
Ken would just get that cookie out of his mouth.
If you ever get upset with anybody because they're not coming back in time, you can give them demerits. Okay?
Oh, you better come in.
Oh, I already had that.
Oh, you did?
There you go. Yes. Yes.
Thank you for coming.
Let's go down to the first and third paragraphs and the last paragraph. That's all. And so we're go back out there for the question and answer. This is all live. We're asking questions. We're asking. I have like panel 5 the best version, and then the moderator says, "How long is we think it's the best version?" I'm not sure exactly wrong here. So there's common themes you would like to point out. I just started talking. Just talk. And by that point, I can't figure out where I am. And plus, I was just pulling off the top of my head. And you didn't cut on my teleprompter.
So, Bill, you think they're going to be able to contain this container of the oil now with this latest?
Winging it, doing a good job, so we just forget it.
Now they're saying it's going to be the end of the year.
One of those things where you wing
Have
it.
they started closing any of those mints off yet?
You know, after you're done, you should force it. It was kind of like I went to a grand
Seems to
opening.
me they could
And heard with
some containment device
Around
in the immediate area.
almost like a big coffer dam type of. I would think that's. I mean, and again, who knows? You know, here I am saying I would think they could. You know, like everybody else on TV, they could put a secondary containment device over this one. You know. But as I said, we've got our brightest.
Apologize, I was trying to round council up. See, I've got some in there.
I reminded my wife. I reminded my wife. Milton, one of the brightest government minds.
All right.
We're just a microcosm.
Joe,
Okay.
we thought you were spending your time talking them back in. You didn't do a very good job.
No, they gotta go to Alpharetta now.
Oh.
So, again, thank you, everybody that's here and going through that with us. We were excited to have all the kids here and made us all proud. Let's see. Will the city clerk please sound the next item?
The next item is results of needs assessment survey for Parks and Recreation. This is being presented by Beth Shapiro and Rusty Parker of the Shapiro Group. Okay. Do we want to do?
Mayor, I think we had talked about perhaps adding the historic preservation public hearing up in front of that one on the agenda just because of the time.
We did, if we've got that on the record, I'm assuming we've got that on the record. Then.
Yes, sir.
I think we're fine with that, so.
That's okay.
The city clerk wants to call that item.
Approval of an ordinance to create Article 13 of the City of Milton zoning ordinance to establish a historic preservation commission in the City of Milton to provide for designation of historic properties, to provide for issuance of certificates of appropriateness, to provide for an appeals procedure, to repeal conflicting ordinances, and for other purposes. This is agenda item number 1078, previously discussed at March 8th council work session. First presentation was on May 17th regular council meeting. This is presented by Ms. Lynn Tully, Community Development Director.
Good evening, Council. This has been a very passionate item for both the Historic Preservation Committee and the Planning Commission, as well as the Design Review Board. We've had a lot of input regarding this particular ordinance. The original version was recommended by the Planning Commission on September 29th of last year. You've got that version as well as the minutes in your packets. I would ask you to note that the recommendation that we're bringing forward tonight is the Historic Preservation Commission version that was approved on March the 3rd of this year, which includes many of the amendments from the Planning Commission, but not all, as well as amendments from the City Attorney's Office after discussion with myself. The principal areas of discussion regarding the two different versions, the version between the Historic Preservation Committee and the Planning Commission, were regarding incentives and rewards, the fact that the ordinance proffered by the Planning Commission did not offer additional incentives, or the Historic Committee suggested adding language to indicate their powers may include making recommendation for incentives to the City Council as necessary. Also included discussion regarding penalties. It was felt that the penalties section was a very large portion of the revised ordinance that really held maybe a lot more, carried a lot more weight than they had originally intended from the committee. The historic districts section was removed by the Planning Commission. The Historic Preservation Committee did feel like it was very important to include historic districts, and in fact the state model ordinance included historic districts, the creation of historic districts as well. Now this is different, and I need to point this out, this is different from the historic zoning district, which is also contemplated in the ordinance. So there are really two different things that we're talking about here. A historic district, which is an aesthetic overlay type district, as well as a historic property designation, which is also an aesthetic overlay type regulation, versus a base zoning district, which is a historic zoning district. Like I said, they're two very different things here. The historic zoning district would include things like setbacks, would include things like uses, but again, that would be very carefully construed on a case-by-case basis by the council. So I need to make that distinction. Also at issue were the appointment and terms section, as well as the ex officio members, and the requirement for a property owner approval for those districts. The state model ordinance does not necessarily require a property owner's approval for designation, so you need to be aware of that as well. The original Historic Preservation Committee version did include recommending a prior use incentive section. At their meetings, the Design Review Board and the Planning Commission did recommend deletion of that incentive, and that has been replaced by the historic zoning district designation. Again, that's that base zoning district designation. That district has not yet been written, as many districts aren't in our zoning ordinance, but are intended to be following adoption of an ordinance or adoption of a policy directed by the council. The ordinance does alter the existing design review boards in the following. It does apply new historic design guidelines to all contributory structures, including single-family residential. There's a distinction there between what is a contributing structure and what is a non-contributing structure in a historic district. So anything that would be contributory, these new historic design guidelines, again, yet to be written, would be applied. And it places the authority to regulate those contributory structures under the jurisdiction of the Historic Preservation Commission, which is, again, yet to be appointed by you all, but this ordinance would create that commission. The DRB would continue to review any plans for structures that are non-contributory, meaning if they do not have any historic significance, however, are within that bounds of that historic district, those would be reviewed by the Design Review Board. Following approval of this, the next steps do include preparation of a Historic Preservation Commission, appointments from you all for staff to prepare a new historic zoning district. Again, that's that base zoning district for amendment into the current zoning ordinance. Once the commission, the Historic Preservation Commission, is put into place, they would then develop historic district design guidelines and conduct public hearings for comments on those. The mayor and city council would have the authority to approve those design guidelines, and then the Historic Preservation Commission could begin nominating properties and districts for inclusion. I would also point out that a member of the Design Review Board may be selected by the Design Review Board to serve as one of the 3 ex officio members of the Historic Planning Commission, and this is recommended by the Planning Commission and the Historic Preservation Committee. So there will be some crossover there. So if I could just quickly run down the statement of the Historic Preservation Commission's powers, just so you are very clear as to what they're intended to do. The HPC shall be authorized to, number 1, prepare and maintain an inventory of all property within the City of Milton having potential for designation as historic. Number 2, recommend to the Milton City Council specific district sites, buildings, structures, or objects to be designated by ordinance as a historic property or a historic district. Number 3, consider approval for proposals or recommendations for possible rezoning of any property to the historic H zoning designation as provided for in Section 4D2A based on prior use and otherwise in accord with the requirements of the historic H zoning designation in the Milton Zoning Code. Number 4, review applications for certificates of appropriateness and grant or deny same in accordance with the provisions of this ordinance. Number 5, recommend to the Milton City Council any designation of a historic property or historic district be revoked or removed. Number 6, to restore or preserve any historic properties acquired by the City of Milton subject to funding availability and with prior approval of the Milton City Council. Number 7, to promote the acquisition by the City of Milton of facade easements and conservation easements as appropriate in accordance with the provisions of the Georgia Uniform Conservation Easement Act of 1992. Number 8, to conduct educational programs on historic properties located within the City of Milton and on general historic preservation activities. Number 9, to make such investigations and studies of matters relating to historic preservation, including consultation with historic preservation experts as the Milton City Council or the HPC itself may, from time to time, deem necessary or appropriate for the purposes of preserving historic resources. Number 10, to research local, state, federal, or private funds for historic preservation and make recommendations to the Milton City Council concerning the most appropriate use of any funds acquired. Number 11, to recommend to the Milton City Council possible historic resource incentive programs for their review. Number 12, to submit to the Historic Preservation Division of the Georgia Department of Natural Resources a list of designated historic properties or historic districts. Number 13, perform historic preservation activities as the official agency of the Milton Historic Preservation Program. Number 14, to retain persons with professional expertise to carry out specific tasks as needed, subject to funding availability and prior approval by the Milton City Council. Number 15, to receive donations, grants, funds, or gifts of historic property and acquire and sell historic properties, provided the Milton City Council has provided prior consent to do so, and all state and local laws regarding local government property disposition are followed. The receipt of donations, grants, funds, or gifts shall be accepted only if such acceptance does not violate the City of Milton Code of Ethics. Number 16, to review and make comments to the Historic Preservation Division of the Georgia Department of Natural Resources concerning the nomination of properties within its jurisdiction to the National Register of Historic Places. Number 17, to participate in private, state, and federal historic preservation programs, and with the approval of the Milton City Council, enter into contractual agreements to do the same. And number 18, recommend to the Milton City Council such sites, buildings, structures, or objects that shall be considered a historical site of interest, and by Milton City Council resolution shall adopt such designation. The Milton City Council will provide an appropriate historical marker to be displayed at the designated site. those are the powers of the commission according to the ordinance as set out. I know that there has been a lot of discussion regarding this ordinance, and I'll be happy to answer any questions.
We'll get into discussion on this. Master City Clerk, do we have any public comment on this?
Yes, Mayor, we have one public comment. Miss Joan Borzilleri.
My name is Joan Borzilleri. I reside at 540 Kings County Court, Milton. I've been a member of the Historic Preservation Committee for the past 18 months. However, tonight I'm speaking as a private citizen. A review of the Historic Preservation Committee's ordinance before you tonight prompted me to send the following email to Milton staff. It went to Lynn Tully with CC to Chris Lagerbloom, and then it was forwarded to the city attorney. Hi, Lynn. I've been also doing a line-by-line compare between this committee-approved version and the last one from March 4th, 2010. First, I'm dismayed that the Historic Preservation Committee never got to meet and discuss this approved version. Even a formal desk review would be better than not seeing it at all before it went to council. Also, there have been two important topics dropped from this final version, one of which Lee Burns from the Department of Natural Resources Historic Preservation Division said in her review of our document from February 2nd, 2010, undue hardship has to be included in this ordinance. It has been omitted. I'm not sure if this was intentional or just a matter of version control, and I've got some specifics on these two items below. In doing a comparison, I'm finding many differences in the current version. That's the version that you received in June as opposed to the approved one on March 4th. Nearly every page has new, changed, or deleted text. Some of these may be from Ken Gerard's review, but now I'm confused about your prior use comments in your email below. When I asked for clarification from Lynn at the end of May, I received an email back May 27th from Lynn saying, the version the committee approved removes the prior use as a determinant for historic zoning designation, but provides that a nonconforming use may be allowed as part of the zoning conditions. When I went back to the ordinance that you have before you tonight, in Section 3C3, there's a reference to prior use. In Section 4A2, there's a reference to based on prior use. And in Section 4D1, I see a reference to previous use. And this all is in relation to historic zoning. So my question is, what wording changed that took out prior use as a determinant for historic zoning, and what has it been replaced with? And does this mean that any historic structure, even residential, can now be approved for nonconforming, in other words, commercial use? Some other things, if you have 2 weeks, city council members, to review this, that you might want to ask is, we have never settled within the Historic Preservation Committee, and this has not been documented, on standards for proving that a structure was historically used for commercial purposes. Is this still an issue? We also have no provision for staff analysis or recommendation of historic zoning in the current document. We also don't have any wording to refer to for what historic zoning is. I have long been concerned that prior use and or a new zoning designation of historic could be misused to introduce commercial in an AG1 area. It creates huge loopholes and undermines the zoning process that we have tried so hard to maintain. Some Lee Burns issues from the Department of Natural Resources. Some of the deviations from the Department of Natural Resource Ordinance sample would make us ineligible for the Certified Local Government designation and the grants that accompany it. As a committee, we tried to adhere to the DNR ordinance sample to prevent confusion. Note that prior use or historic zoning is not in the DNR sample and was rejected by the Planning Commission and the DRB. The two Lee Burns issues that I would bring up tonight are Section 2F, paint color will not be regulated by this ordinance. This has been dropped in the current version, and DNR says it should be included. And then Section 5, and when I spoke to Lynn before the meeting, she said that this would be put back in. But what you have right now does not have this. This is the undue hardship paragraph, and the full text was in the March 4th, 2010 version, and it's straight from the DNR sample. And again, the DNR staff says it must be there. I'm concerned with these omissions and also the changes in the prior use sections that have not been reviewed by the Historic Preservation Committee. Please either make these changes before tonight's council presentation or withdraw the ordinance till we can get some of these concerns answered. If I'm confused after 18 months of changes to the ordinance, I'm sure others have questions as well. I would welcome a workflow of the process for historic zoning. Where does this fit into the normal flow of the process, and how is the Planning Commission involved? Some of my confusion comes from Section 4D1, and I quote from the ordinance that you have before you. Creation of the historic H zoning designation shall be in accord with the ordinary procedures and processes for zoning district creation in the city of Milton, and the final decision regarding the components and uses authorized by and in the historic zoning district shall remain exclusively with the Milton City Council. Whenever we talked
Ms.
about...
Borzilleri, your time is up unless we want to extend.
If it's the will of the council, I'd be okay with allowing extension of another minute or two.
20 seconds. Whenever we talked about the prior use, we talked about it in reference to a property, and now the text has been changed to say district, and I'm sure there's a good reason for this, but I would like to be able to defend this ordinance and understand it. And then if the final decision rests with City Council, what happens to the Planning Commission and the DRB recommendations? I believe this document needs more clarification and should be withdrawn or deferred this evening. Thank you.
Do we have any other public comment on this?
No, sir, that's all.
Okay. I'm going to go ahead and close the public hearing and now just open this up for questions from council. Ms. Beck, Karen?
Lynn, would you mind clarifying for everyone what this historic zoning would be and the fact that it would be a rezoning? We have to go through all the channels that a typical rezoning does go through? Because I think people are afraid that this historic zoning is bypassing the standard rezoning, whereas I believe this is what the Planning Commission had wanted, which was for things to go back through them, and this would take care of that.
First, I need to let you know that the historic zoning designation, the historic zoning district that could be applied for, would come following a recommendation from the Historic Preservation Committee, and for it to be considered even as a historic part of a historic district, or even as a historic building or property on its own. So there's going to be that level of scrutiny first. And then, should the property owner wish, or the Historic Preservation Commission wish, they can nominate that property or propose that property for rezoning with the property owner's approval to this H zoning designation. Now, the H zoning designation has not yet been written by council or by staff for council. It would be I would anticipate it to be very closely and very tightly construed for each specific property. The intent here is that it would not set any precedents, but it would be specific to each property that is zoned. So it would be conditioned to allow only certain things, for instance, to have specific setbacks, to have specific allowances that they may not normally have under their current zoning designation. So it's really more of something that may be currently non-conforming, that is somewhat benign, could be included, but it does not require, again, that you all allow any particular use. That would be at the request of the owner and in the agreement of the council after hearing. So it would have to go through all those processes. It would still have to go to Planning Commission. Planning Commission would have to make that recommendation to council before you hear it. So there are lots of opportunities for public hearing on those particular items.
So it's
much more restrictive than as it was originally, I guess, drafted initially by the Historic Preservation Committee, where the prior use was more automatic. Now,
Yes, ma'am.
through the Planning Commission, they could recommend whatever conditions they believe ought to be with it, then it comes before us, and we can put conditions with it as to the use, as to setbacks, parking, whatever else we feel like is appropriate.
Yes, ma'am. That's the intent. And the intent is not for it to set any precedent whatsoever, for it to be significant in and of itself, unto itself only.
So from that point of view, the workflow is very, very similar to what we're doing right now in terms of zoning cases themselves.
In terms of zoning cases, it's before it even gets to be a zoning case, that it's much more complicated because it does have to go through that designation process.
Okay.
I guess I'm a little, Mayor, may I?
Yes.
I'm sorry. I think I heard you say that the historic zoning designation is not yet created. And as I went through and reviewed and re-reviewed as we've gone through this process and looking at the most recent draft, I have to say it perplexes me a little bit that we would consider approving a document when that designation hasn't been drafted, hasn't even been articulated, other than the comments that were just made. One of the things that I find very helpful would be to have a better sense from staff in terms of what this historic zoning designation could contemplate, and rather than to talk in generalities that would be property specific, but what would those include? Could it occur in a residential community? We just heard from somebody from the the HPC, that that's a question that they have. Is it contemplated that this sort of designation could occur across all zoning districts? I know that the CPAC committee obviously is working right now and looking at different zoning districts. I don't know that this had been something that they had contemplated. But I do find it a little bit unusual that we would contemplate approving an ordinance that is predicated on a zoning district that hasn't been defined. That seems to be a little bit reverse from what I would hope us to see. I mean, to me, I would draw an analogy that would say, we wouldn't sign a business contract if you didn't know the particulars of the contract. And if now we do have, 2 weeks, which it sounds like we at least have 2 weeks, I do think it's important that we have more information as to what that zoning district would actually contemplate, as opposed to it being a nebulous concept. I think, where could it apply? Would it apply to prior uses? Because one of the sentences in here talks about the fact that it would or could include prior use, and then I think actually another place that actually talks about the fact that it would include prior use. So a question I have is that this ordinance, is it already presuming that prior use then becomes one of those considerations? And if we're going to enumerate that consideration, I think we have to enumerate then others. Again, it's a little bit reverse from what I'm accustomed to from the zoning perspective. Typically, you have the definition of what a zoning district is going to be, and then you move forward. And so I think that would be, at least for this council member, it would be very important to have some specifics surrounding a potential historic zoning district, since we haven't received those prior to now. Another question I have, and I think I've heard two different things, and if you could just clarify, I think when you first were reviewing the documentation, it was mentioned that this document is that which was approved in March.
Yes.
I'm not sure that that's what I just heard from the public comment.
Well, I have to caveat that. It was the document that was heard in March, and then county attorney reviewed it, and in concert with myself, and we tried to, following the council work session, we attempted to make clarifications and changes where necessary to meet what we found was the direction from the council at that work session, which was to make it legal, attempt to follow the HPC's version as closely as possible. And that's what we tried to do.
And maybe another thing, at least for me, that would be helpful, because I tried to compare the two documents you provided us, the one from the Planning Commission. It looked like a few of those things were incorporated. It looked like maybe the majority had not been. I don't know if there's a way just to highlight those things that were carried over, because I think that there's probably fewer that were carried over from the Planning Commission than not. And I am knowing that they unanimously had asked for the prior use designation to be deleted, as did the Design Review Board. It concerns me a little bit that we've completely discounted a unanimous decision by the Planning Commission with regards to the ordinance that's before us this evening, and that we'll see again on the 21st. So if there's a way to highlight what elements from the Planning Commission are part of this document. I think I've caught, at least from my perspective, some of those, but I'm sure that you're closer to it, and that would be very helpful. And I guess, again, knowing that we've now got 2 weeks, would it be reasonable to assume that this, if nothing else, just individually, that the planning commission members would have an opportunity to review this? It sounds like at least one member of the Historic Preservation Committee is asked to be able to review it more thoroughly. And just a thought is that since there's now a window of opportunity, it would seem reasonable to at least provide that, and people can choose to review that or not. But,
I mean, I think that would be fine, Councilmember, and I understand that. The only thing I would offer up is the differences between the Planning Commission version and the Historic Preservation version were fairly radical. These were not situations where there was some tweaking or trimming. I mean, they're fairly divergent documents, and so you're right. I mean, for instance, the Planning Commission said no to prior use, and then the HPC puts forth one that has a historic designation, zoning designation that anticipates a prior use, and in fact, the HPC one said it would that the zoning designation would allow a specific previous use, and we changed that to may allow simply because we thought that was more consistent with the trying to, especially we could harmonize the 2 versions when you have the Planning Commission saying no and the HPC saying yes. Where do you fall? So that's probably the source of some of the frustration.
and I do appreciate that comment, and it actually leads me to another perplexity. And that is that I'm hearing that the zoning designation is really an issue to go through the zoning process, including the Planning Commission. And this document that's before us contemplates some zoning components, including actual language that will become part of the zoning document that the HPC wouldn't articulate, but that the Planning Commission would need to weigh in on. So that seems to be a little bit of conflict of who has ownership of the zoning process, if you will. It would seem to me that it would be cleaner and more consistent with our zoning process if anything related to what that language would ultimately be is not articulated here, because I think I've heard both staff and our city attorney say that the historic zoning designation would be a compilation of staff's input as well as going before the Planning Commission. And I think as currently written, the document right now from the HPC, which is not part of the zoning process, contemplates already some language. And so I think legally that's a little.
Let me offer up this response, and I hear you and I understand that. I think what it says is, and again, we struggle with this, it says that the new H zoning designation may allow a specific previous use to continue in a structure that would otherwise be considered non-conforming. Is it fair to say that if a new ordinance is drafted, that would be a starting place for consideration? It is. Because they would look at this code, that would be the instruction of the council to whoever is drafting that they consider the word may. Now, that doesn't mean they have to, that doesn't mean that a code would be brought to you, a new H designation that would have that as a shall, but you're correct. It does mean that it would need to be contemplated.
And so that strikes me as a little bit of a conflict, and I will just ask Mr. Jordan, back on page 4,
yes,
under the HPC powers that Lynn read was number 3, and I'm not sure if this is similar to, I think it's similar, but it's not the same as the language you just referenced as to may include. This actually says, if I'm reading it correctly, that the historic zoning designation is provided for in section 4D2 based on prior use. And here it doesn't say may be based, it says that it would be based on. And so that to me is in conflict with the statement that I think you just read that indicated that it may be.
But the more specific is going to control over the more general. And so I believe that the way that new zoning designation would have to be drafted would be with an eye toward may provide, and then that would need to go through your all's process. And you all may not like any of that. You may decide that it doesn't need to have any prior use recognition, and that would be perfectly appropriate. I think the point that Lynn was trying to make in this was to say that the new zoning, the H zoning designation that this ordinance contemplate is wide open right now and can be pretty much whatever you all want it to be using the legislative process that you all have and the discretion you have when you adopt new ordinances. So that's the way I would think it.
And I want to break in here for a second, and I know Councilmember Tartt, you had a question, and I want to make a suggestion.
Okay.
Yeah, not to restate what Councilmember Connor Bailey has already pointed out, but I too am a little perplexed by what seems to be a conflict between Section 3, C3 on page 4, and Section 4. This is 4A2 on page 9, and also again on section on page 9. I got my all pages, but anyway, it's Section 3C3. Section 4A2 and Section D, paragraphs, or Section 4D 1 and 2, where it talks in one section or two sections about the prior use being included and as a power of the HPC. But then the other, we tweaked the word in section. I guess this is section 4D1, where we tweaked the word where it says it may allow a specific previous use to continue. We tweaked that to be from it shall to it may. Again, I consider that conflicting language in those three sections. I know you may say that this is the more specific language of the three, and that this could be what would really drive us. I don't really see this as specific language. If there is a list of specifications for this zoning designation, which we haven't come up with yet, and you say it may allow a specific previous use to continue, that could also be interpreted as a specific structure who it's alleged that it does have a prior use. That could be something that could be considered. That doesn't, if you put it shall allow, that may not apply to every single structure that's going to come before the HPC or this body, because it may not have a prior use. There's a little confusion with the interpretation of that. I don't think changing shall may or changing shall to may is going to work right there to address the concerns of this body as we articulated at the work session, and also what was a unanimous vote, I understand, from the Planning Commission and the DRB.
Okay. Is there anybody else that has not asked a question that has a question for staff on this right now? What I'm going to suggest is, since we are postponing this, deferring this for 2 weeks, that any council member that has questions or issues on certain items to put that in an email, send it to our staff within a week from now, so that our staff, and I want to be firm on that deadline, so the staff has time to review those questions and concerns with our city attorney, and then have staff recommend back to us, or have something so that the council can make a decision. I think the problem here is, we've got a committee that's working very hard on this, but by the time you send it back around to 3 different bodies, it's you're kind of spinning your wheels, and everybody's having their play with it. So I think we need to get some direction from staff and the experts in the committee. And if there is concerns, as we've heard citizens and people on the committee and council members, let's address those, and then let the council make the decision. Does that make sense for staff?
Yes, sir.
All right, with council?
Yes, sir, thank you.
Okay. So really, we've closed the public hearing. We're not going to take action on this. So we'll move on to the next. City clerk, please sign the next item.
Next item is results of needs assessment survey for Parks and Recreation. This is being presented by Beth Shapiro and Rusty Parker of the Shapiro Group.
It just doesn't want to cooperate. Good evening, Mr. Mayor and council members. I'm Beth Shapiro, and I'm president of the Shapiro Group. And I want to first of all congratulate you on not only on the winning lacrosse teams, but on the incredible discipline instilled in those teenagers, because not a one of them took a cookie until they were given permission to, and that was quite impressive. Of course, my staff member and I were sitting here eyeing them and going, we'll take them if they won't. We want to thank you for engaging our firm to conduct the Parks and Recreation Needs Assessment. We've been in business, this is our 26th year now, and we've worked in a number of different communities around the country, and this is a first for us in terms of working with a community that is at its inception, and where a needs assessment like this will be guiding your efforts and guiding the Parks and Recreation system that you put together that will last for years to come. So this has been more exciting than usual to work on this project. I'm going to turn the floor over to Dr. Rusty Parker, who is our senior strategist and who was the project manager on this project. But before I do, I'd very much like to acknowledge and to thank Cindy, the Parks and Recreation Director, who has been very helpful to us. She's just a very efficient, well-organized person, and we've enjoyed thoroughly working with her. And I'm now going to turn it over to Rusty to tell you what we found.
Thank you very much, Mayor and council members. I think we found some pretty interesting results. I'm really excited to be here and tell you all what we found. Okay. So first, let me tell you a little bit about what we did. We sent a needs assessment document to each house and apartment in Milton, as well as all residential property owners. We sent out a total of 11,437 documents. Of those, 2,629 were returned, which gives us about a 23% response rate. We covered several topics in the document, such as facilities and programs that residents would like to see funded by the city, funding options for those facilities and programs, as well as how residents use the parks and recreation facilities that they have available to them. Let's first take a look at the demographics of the folks that return these needs assessments. Mainly females, 58% to 42%. Wide age spectrum, you can see a majority of the folks were between 30 and 49. We also asked if folks own or rent their homes, and as you might expect, an overwhelming majority own their homes. We asked how many children ages 18 and under live in your household. More than half households have children age 18 and under living in their household. We also asked them to have, if they have children in their household in any of the following age ranges. You can see about half have children ages 6 to 15 in their homes. And finally, we looked at what part of town folks are from. You can see nearly half of the respondents come from the southeast quadrant of town. When we compared where the surveys came from to where we sent them to, the percentages matched exactly. So we sent 47% of the surveys to addresses in the southeast section of town, and we received 47% of them back. So let's get into the main substantive areas. First, we listed several facilities and programs, and we asked folks to check the ones that they would like the city to fund or to help fund. So we chose to present this as top 10 list. So first, let's look at the top 10 facilities that folks like. You'll see that the first thing you'll notice is that only 3 of the options received a majority of support. The next thing you'll notice is that the themes that emerge that are pretty clear actually throughout the results of the needs assessment. The first is, if you look at the top 5 options that are the most popular among residents, you'll see they're paved multipurpose trails, playgrounds, picnic shelters, spaces left natural, unpaved hiking trails, things that are used to enhance the outdoor experience for residents. The next theme that you'll see is residents' desire for youth activities or youth facilities. You'll notice youth soccer, youth baseball, indoor youth sports. So residents are very interested in things that enhance their outdoor experience, as well as things that will help their youth engage. The next item that we looked at, we noticed that several facilities could be combined. So you might be able to, just as an example, youth softball and adult softball might be able to be played in the same facility. So we combined a couple of these things, and I show a couple of examples here of ways that the data could be used to, if you wanted to combine any of the specific items. So you'll see that now if we combine things like lacrosse, soccer, football, things that could be played on a rectangle field in a rectangle facility, that when those are combined, those begin to pop, and they're now in the top 3. If you look at sports such as baseball and softball that could all be played on a diamond field, that worked its way into the top 4 then. And again, these are just a couple of examples. There might be other things that could be combined into similar facilities. These are just 2 examples of what can be done with the data. Next, we look at the bottom 10 facilities. I say the bottom 10, but some of them still received upwards of a quarter of support from the residents. A couple of themes along here as well. And I'm glad that the lacrosse players have left before I say this, but lacrosse and other less prominent sports placed in the bottom 10, lacrosse, volleyball, skate parks, roller hockey, things like that. The other things that tend to place in the bottom 10 facilities were things specifically for adult sports, indoor adult sports, adult softball, adult soccer, adult lacrosse. Now let's turn to programs. Looking at the top 10 programs, you'll see a little bit of difference between the previous lists in that the top programming options that residents are interested in are kind of one-of-a-kind events, like city festivals, holiday celebrations, concerts. Those are all very, very popular among the residents. And again, you'll see their interest in youth programs as well, youth soccer, youth baseball, indoor youth sports, youth softball. Now turning to the bottom 10 programs. Again, you'll see it's things like adult sports, adult softball, adult soccer, adult lacrosse. These specifically adult programs residents are not as supportive of. And to show exactly how much in favor residents are of this youth programming, youth facilities, we have a few items on the instrument where we specifically asked something. For instance, for soccer, we had one line item for adult soccer. We had another one for youth soccer. We had 4 such items where we can make this comparison. You can see across the board that residents are more favorable towards the youth facilities than they are the adult facilities. And the same applies to programs. Residents care much more about youth programs than adult. We next wanted to look at what subgroups among the residents might matter, what demographic groups might feel differently than others. The first one that we found was important throughout was folks with children. Residents with children consistently felt differently about these things than residents without children. So let's take another look back at the top 10 facilities list. Now we're looking at the blue bars, which is folks who do have children, comparing them to the gray bars, which are the folks who do not have children. And you'll see overall that only one new item is in there, youth softball, placed higher among folks with kids. But you'll also notice that the folks with children are more likely to support each of these items. The next group that was important were young residents, ages 18 to 29. So here again, we look at the top 10 facilities for younger respondents, and you'll see the items marked with asterisks are items that were not in the overall top 10 list. So there's a few things that are different for the younger folks: dog parks, multi-sport facilities, and indoor swimming. But again, you'll see that items such as multi-purpose trails, picnic shelters, unpaved hiking trails all placed very highly, again, enhancing the outdoor experience. Next, we look at the other subgroup that was very important, which is the older respondents, ages 60 and over. And so we compare those against those who are younger than 60. You'll notice, as you might expect, senior citizens activities now appears in this list as something that they're likely to support. But still, multi-purpose trails, playgrounds, natural spaces, all placed very highly. So after we provided residents this list of things that they'd like to see the city fund, we'd say, how would you like the city to fund them? So we asked about a series of funding options that might be available for these things. The most popular was grant money, followed by capital improvement bonds, then user fees. The 2 lowest were annual parks and recreation fee and increased property taxes, the 2 items that would be most obvious and would appear on their bill every year, or were the least likely to be supported. And about 22% of folks said that they were not interested in the city supporting facilities in any of those matters. Next, looking at how they'd like to support programming. You can see user fees now appears at the top and actually receives a majority of support. After that, the story is about the same. Annual Parks and Recreation fee and increased property taxes are at the very bottom of the list. And the number of folks that said none actually jumps up a little bit to 26%. And we'll see that in the next graph where we compare programming versus facility support. You see folks are more likely to say that they want grant money to support facilities. On the third line, folks are much more likely to say that they want programs supported through user fees. Next, we looked at, we looked at the same things by presence of children. The residents with children more likely to support almost each of these than folks without children. Also, you'll see that the folks with children at the very bottom are less likely to say, I don't want these funded at all. Same thing for programs. Much more likely to say each of these, less likely to say none. The next section of the survey asked about how often they visited parks and recreation facilities in their area. So we asked about a few of those. The first was, the most popular one was parks and surrounding areas. Nearly 2/3 say that they visit those at least somewhat often. That was followed by membership facilities, and then local private facilities, and then Bell Memorial Park is visited the least often by residents. And we further broke this down by presence of children. So now we're just looking at the folks that said, I visit these places very often. And you can see overwhelmingly it's the residents with children who are visiting each of these locations very often compared to residents without children. And next we asked, how often do they go to these places for various reasons? And you'll see the themes that we talked about before: enhanced overall experience of outdoors. The top two reasons folks go there are just to exercise, run, walk, hike, or bike, or simply to visit and enjoy a park. The next two reasons, again, for an athletic league for their children, or just to take their child to play. And again, breaking it down by presence of children. Obviously, the folks with children are more likely to take their children to participate in an athletic league or to take their children to play. But even things like just getting out to run, walk, bike, visit and enjoy the park, classes and programs, participate in athletic leagues themselves. So to sum it all up, the most popular facilities, the outdoors items, trails, picnic shelters, playgrounds. Also the items that are youth-oriented, they get their kids out in activities. The most popular programs, the one-time events for the general population, such as festivals, holiday celebrations, and concerts, and also youth-oriented programs. The most popular funding options, grant money, very popular. For facilities, folks are more interested in capital improvement bonds, and for programs, folks are very interested in user fees. And the important subgroups throughout were parents, younger residents, and older residents. And I would be happy to answer any questions you all might have.
Council have any questions? Did any of those results that you went over surprise you in any way?
I was honestly a little bit surprised at how consistent everyone was. I thought it was great. I love that people were excited to see kids. After hearing so much about the lacrosse, I was a little surprised that it placed on the bottom 10, but again, it still received some support. So maybe if we had done it this month, then we might have gotten different results.
Well, I think that initially sounded, to me too, with lacrosse. But the thing is, it's still, as a percentage of population, still a pretty large amount of people.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you, Mayor. Thinking about rectangular and diamond facilities, and this may or may not be a topic for this evening, but knowing that youth versus adult, obviously the dimensions of those fields are different, and the dimensions for football versus soccer versus others. Just whether or not that's this evening or at some point, I'd love to talk about the dimensions of those and how they vary when we think about from a planning perspective, and how realistic it is that multiple uses could be on that field, and just what would be required. I know that there's some movable sorts of fencings, et cetera, but I'd like to better understand that, because I know that those two things were not articulated that way on the survey. and I realize that you said that that was just one way that you kind of combined the data, to perhaps reflect it in a little bit different way.
Sure.
But maybe separately, we could have a discussion about that and what that would mean or not mean. And also, I was just curious, 59, and I knew that there was an issue with when they first sent out the surveys, there was not an envelope for those that went back out. And I was interested, there was about 60 that sent them in twice. I guess those are some committed citizens.
Yes.
That sent them in once and thought, wow, I've got another one, I'm going to send them the second time. Did you see that those 60, I'm just curious, was that dispersed throughout the city, or did those 60 come from just one particular area?
I'm afraid I did not look at that, actually.
I'm just curious from a data analysis perspective.
Mhm.
I love statistics, so I'd be curious if that just happened to be that that's from an area that tends to be more responsive to surveys.
Sure, that's a great question. Yeah, I can look into that.
It's not going to change the validity of the numbers, but I'm just curious from a response
Mhm.
standpoint.
Sharon, do you have a question?
I know there was one open question at the end. Are we gonna get the results of what people filled in on that?
Yes, we are.
Who's doing the results?
Yes.
Okay, so I just thought it's always interesting, you know, a lot of people won't do anything except fill out a roll
Sure.
box or square box, but some people do like to write.
Yes, they
Tell you
do.
what they think.
Folks were very excited to fill out their opinions on that part. And, he has a lot of hard work ahead of him, but it's good work.
Excited, like some people use passion.
Passion.
Word.
Okay, well, it's good to know that they do take the time to put that down.
Yes.
Okay. In the gas section? Okay.
All right. Thank you very much.
All right. Thank you, Russ. Cindy, do you have anything you want to add to? Okay. All right. So say we don't have any items on our first presentation, so we've got a couple public hearings. Will the city clerk please sound that item?
First public hearing is alcohol beverage license applications. Approval of alcohol beverage license for Manor Golf Development, LLC, at 15951 Manor Club Drive, Milton, Georgia. The applicant is Riverfront Management, Inc., for wine, malt, beverages, and distilled spirits. This is agenda item number 101148. Ms. Stacy Inglis, Finance Director.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. This item is simply a transfer of ownership, and they followed all the city regulations, the ordinance, and posted the signs, and we did the advertising. Everything is neat and tidy, so staff recommends approval.
Okay. Do I have any questions for Stacy on this?
If you could state for the record that that's been in place under the prior ownership,
Yes.
and that
Yeah.
there's been no issues with that issuance.
No, there's never been an issue with the issuance.
Issue with the issue. Thank you.
Did you have any public comment on that?
No, sir.
Question?
What's the difference between the first one and the second one that was removed?
The one is the clubhouse, and the second one is the indoor tennis facilities. The only reason why the second one was removed was because the advertising. We sent the proper advertising to the paper, and the paper actually copied the advertising for the clubhouse twice.
Okay.
And so we had to re-advertise that at the expense of the paper. And so they're taking care of that for us, and we just removed it to defer it to the next meeting.
Okay. Anybody else? Okay, I'll close the public hearing on that and open up the floor for a motion.
I'd like to make a motion for the approval of an alcohol beverage license for Manor Golf Development, LLC, at 15951 Manor Club Drive, Milton, Georgia. Applicant is Riverfront Management, Inc., wine, malt beverages, and distilled spirits. Agenda item 10-1148.
I'll second it.
Okay, you have a motion by Councilmember Hewitt, second by Councilmember Thurman. Is there any discussion? Hearing none. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That's unanimous. And for the record, just make sure that we know that Councilmember Wallace had to leave for a prior engagement, so I say unanimous. That's six opposed. Okay, will the city clerk please sound the next item?
Next item is approval of alcohol beverage license for the Olive Group, doing business as River Tavern, at 2955 Bethany Bend, Suite 300-400, Milton, Georgia. The applicant is Michelle C. Steinfield for wine, malt beverages, and distilled spirits. Agenda item number 101150. Ms. Stacy Inglis.
This applicant also followed all the regulations of the city ordinance, and staff recommends approval. And just so you're aware, what is located is at the corner of Bethany Bend and Highway 9, where Foster's Grill and then Mike 67 used to be.
Is that Bethany Bend or Bethany Bend Road?
Bethany Bend.
Ah, okay, just checking.
Bethany Bend, and just as technicality, the road part will be taken off
Yeah.
the agenda. Is there any public comment on this?
No, sir.
Is there any questions or discussion from the council?
Mayor, I'll make
Let me close the public hearing, and then, close the public hearing, and then is there a motion?
Mayor, I'll make a motion that we approve alcohol beverage license for the Olive Group DBA River Tavern at 2955 Bethany Bend Road, Suite 300-400, Milton, Georgia. Applicant is Michelle C. Steinfeld for wine, malt beverages, and distilled spirits. Agenda item number 10-1150.
I'll second the motion.
We have a motion by Councilmember Thurman, second by Councilmember Bailey. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That's unanimous. And I'm assuming this is the applicant
Yes.
here. Just want to wish you guys well. I hate to say, but I have not been in there to try your restaurant yet, but I've heard a lot of good things. A lot of our city staff have been to your restaurant, so I've heard some great things. So we just wish you guys well, and let us know if there's anything we can do from the city's perspective to help your business. Okay. No items under zoning tonight, so we're going to move on to unfinished business. Will the city clerk please sound the next item? And I believe we have taken care of that, the first item on the Historic Preservation Committee. So move on to the second.
Approval of an ordinance to amend Chapter 20, Environment, Article 6, Soil Erosion and Sedimentation Control of the City of Milton Code of Ordinances. Agenda item number 10-1139. This was previously discussed at April 19th council work session. First presentation was on May 17th regular council meeting. Ms. Lynn Tully.
As you all may remember, this includes amendments required by the state, the EPD, for compliance with their model code as well. What we have done is we have just simply included their changes within our current ordinance, as well as where we have kept those areas where we are stricter than the state's model ordinance. So that's in a nutshell. It's fairly self-explanatory, and if you have any other questions, I'll be happy to answer those.
Okay, do I have any questions for Ms. Tully? Okay, do I have a motion and a second?
I can make a motion.
Mr. Mayor, I think we had discussed, just out of abundance of caution on this one, to have a public hearing this evening and go ahead and move it.
Okay.
For the final decision at the June 21st meeting. I'm going to get with the city manager and Lynn, and we're going to go over the procedures for this, but just to placate me this evening, I would appreciate it.
Okay, I'll ask, do we have any public comment?
No, sir.
Okay, and then I'm going to close the public hearing then. And is there any other council discussion? Okay, and then we will defer this to the next meeting, or we'll put it on our agenda. Okay, let's move on to new business. City clerk, please sound the next item.
Approval for the submission of an application to FEMA's Assistance to Firefighters Grant to support the Advanced Life Support Initiative of the Milton Fire Department. This is agenda item number 10-1151. Mr. Robert Edgar, Fire Chief.
Mayor, Council, good evening. This grant application is going to do is allow us to enhance our ALS capabilities throughout the city. This will add 3 additional defibrillators to the department, 1 for each unit. So it reduces the time in responding ALS units. We have a unit in the zone ready to go with paramedics available. It's a match. It has a 10% match to it, which then can be funded for next fiscal year if approved. If you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer.
Okay, any questions for Chief Edgar?
Thank you.
We'll all support that kind of thing.
Just had one quick question.
Yes.
When will we know whether or not we're receiving?
This will not be approved, I believe, until December is the closing on the AFG grants, the Assistance for Firefighter grants. So what I'd like to do is go ahead and propose it into the budget, and then assuming that we're approved for that, there is a possibility that they'll only award a partial amount. So, and we're certainly willing to accept that as well.
Okay. Is there a motion and a second on this?
I'll put forward a motion, Mayor, to approve the submission of an application to FEMA's Assistance to Firefighters Grant to support the Advanced Life Support Initiative of the Milton Fire Department. Agenda item number 10-1151.
I'll second it.
We have a motion from Councilmember Bailey, a second by Councilmember Thurman. Have any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That's unanimous. Okay, will City Clerk please sign the next item, and you bet her will just keep us finished.
Approval for Milton's participation in a regional application to FEMA's Assistance to Firefighters Grant to support the UASI Communications Program in North Fulton. This is agenda item number 10-1152. Mr. Bob Edgar.
Mayor, Council, this grant here before you tonight is the first of many you'll probably see as time goes on. As you're aware, our current communication system is failing. And what we're trying to do as part of the North Fulton cities is put a work group together to seek funding to enhance that in a regional scope. So what we've done here is by approving this grant, what we'll do is remain an active participant within this work group that's been established. And that's all it does at this point. It's just so we can continue seeking some type of alternative to enhance our communication system as a regional system. So there are multiple grants that are coming up and that we are applying for as part of this work group.
Any questions for Chief? All right, do I have a motion and a second?
Mayor, I'd like to make a motion to approve Milton's participation in a regional application to FEMA's Assistance to Firefighters Grant to support UASI Communications Program in North Fulton, agenda item 10-1152.
I'll second that.
Okay, we got a motion by Councilmember Tartt, second by Councilmember Longoria. Any discussion? Council, hearing none, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Thank
Any
you.
opposed? That passes unanimous. Okay, we'll move on to council reports. The only thing I want to add is I was, and several council members as well as staff were in attendance at the Memorial Day ceremony, and I was proud and moved by the turnout and just the experience of the service. So again, I wanted to also thank Councilmember Luss for putting forth the effort getting some things started. So hopefully now it'll take off, and that's a great tradition. But I just wanted to again say how proud it made me to be part of the city of Milton. Is there any council members that would like to report on something?
I will echo that. I thought it was a wonderful celebration. I had family in from 5 different states for it. And they all were very, very moved by the crosses and the celebration in general. So
You had a crew there.
I had it for
A
there.
lot of
They came from
Thurmans.
all
There was a
over.
lot of Thurmans
And I
on
have
the,
some good pictures of the Thurman
there was a
family.
lot of Thurmans on the list
I
too.
think I
as
had
far
at
as-
least 10 cameras.
Those are all Mark's uncles.
Veterans,
Yeah,
were they?
they're all
Yeah,
uncles. So
that's
he's got
great.
one remaining uncle alive.
Wow.
I think that one really cool thing for those that may not have been able to make it, it was a cloudy day, it was a rainy day, and yet right at the time that we had a flyover, it seemed that the clouds parted and off our obviously Greg Foster mentioned this as part of his invocation of our afterwards, but the fact that the sky parted a little bit so that we could see that flyover just at the right time for the missing man flyover was pretty amazing.
Okay, anything else from council?
I just wanted to remind council and staff that I will not be at next Monday's work session because I will be in training in Houston, Texas for planning section chief incident command system training.
Move on to our interim or sitting in city manager. Do we have any staff reports?
No, I do not.
Okay, anybody else? All right, then that concludes this meeting. Do we have a motion to adjourn?
Mr. Mayor, would it be appropriate, I need an executive session for 3 litigation items to just update the council on.
Do we need to amend our agenda item to add those?
Yeah,
Or is
it's
it?
within the,
It's already in there.
Yes, if needed.
it's in there if needed, but
I need it.
if we're okay, if you're okay with it legally,
Yep.
do I have a motion that we move into executive session to discuss three litigation items.
So moved.
Second.
I have a motion by Councilmember Thurman, second by Councilmember Tartt. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
That's unanimous. Want to reconvene the meeting? So I have a motion and a second.
So moved.
Second.
A motion by Councilmember Tarr, second by Councilmember Hewitt. And I'm going to conclude this meeting. Do I have a motion that we adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Councilmember Tarr, second by Councilmember Thurman. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That's unanimous. 8:23.